Willkommen beim Nerds of Law Podcast. Die Nerds of Law, das sind Katharina Bisset und Michael Lanzinger. Wir präsentieren euch Neuigkeiten zu Recht und Technik, spannende Interviews sowie Tipps und Tricks generell zur geekigen Seite des Rechts. Denn vergesst nie, Law is the ultimate science.
Nerds of Law episode 116. No hiding behind the hourly rate with Elani Maas. Hello and welcome to another English-speaking Nerds of Law podcast episode. Today we have, I think, our guest with the biggest time difference. We have Elani Maas with us. I've been following her already for a while on LinkedIn from the whole contract nerdy bubble, and when she announced that she was having and starting a special project about value pricing, I was triggered. I was like, okay, I have to talk to her. And then we had such a fantastic talk. Together, the two of us, we decided, okay, I need to get her on the podcast. We need to convince Michael and all of our dear listeners out there who are already sick of me saying every second podcast episode, which is a lie because it's probably each one, that the hourly rate must die. So now we've got the pro here. Dear Elani, thank you for coming, and please tell our listeners what your background is and how you got here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Katharina and Michael. It's so lovely to be joining you and your listeners from the other side of the globe. So a bit about me. My name is Elani Maas, and I am joining you from the southwest of Western Australia. So I'm the practice manager of a small family law firm which exclusively provides legal services to clients on a value pricing basis. And I'm the managing director of a consultancy business which is called Recalibrate Legal Operations, where we help other law firms incorporate value pricing into their practices and make that transition from the traditional model of law. So my experience in the value pricing area comes from about 7 or 8 years ago. I was working in a previous practice, and that was a time-based law firm at the time, and they made the decision to transition over to value pricing. I was the accounts manager there, so my role changed quite significantly into managing that transition, and basically everything value pricing was in my basket as we were on this sort of learning journey together. So on the ground within that firm while we transitioned it over and changed the business model. And then more recently, when I left that firm, I joined 2 other colleagues who had started up Bromfield Family Law, which is the small family law firm that I'm still with today. And as a startup, having that additional experience in terms of, working out the nuts and the bolts of how we're going to run the business from the ground up as a small sort of remote practice, so value pricing, but in a very different way.
And this is like super, super exciting. And just because I get all like warm and tingly every time you say value pricing, doesn't mean our listeners necessarily know what it is we're talking about.
I have to say I'm actually very interested too.
Elani, let's start with what is value pricing.
Okay, so value pricing is a pricing model where the lawyer and the client agree upfront on the scope of work that the lawyer will perform and the fixed price for that work. So that model is different to the typical sort of fixed fee or flat fee type of arrangement that may be similar to like a menu price where you've got all of your predetermined fixed fees. In each sort of price under the value pricing model, each scope and price is tailored to the client and that outcome being achieved for them. So what that really involves is an upfront conversation with the client about what their expectations are, what their desired service level is, what their objectives are, what their budget may be, drilling down into those key components about what the client actually values and is coming to you for your help with. and it typically involves, creating some options from which they can choose to align with their needs and that budget. So yeah, it really is sort of custom pricing and custom scoping based on what the client's needs are and what you can help them with. What it also relies upon is on applying a project management style approach to the legal work to ensure that you're then working within that agreed scope and completing those key deliverables and the things that you've agreed on within those pre-agreed timeframes. So I guess the method of value pricing is something which is actually common practice in many other professions, such as engineering or construction or, software development, some branches of accountancy, those sorts of things. And the legal industry has been relatively slow on the uptake of the model. It may sound innovative to law because it is quite different to the traditional model of law, but it certainly isn't anything new.
That's very cool because just moving away from the hourly rate is already a big step, and then you take the fixed price and then add value on top of it. And from my perspective, for me it was much easier to estimate a fixed price or estimate or offer basically a budget when I approached it with the value in mind rather than the time I was going to spend on it. So how... And when I talked to you, and that was one of the most interesting things that about you is that I always thought family law, a more trial-based, a more unexpected legal field might be the most challenging or even impossible one to implement value and implement fixed prices and stuff like that. How did you approach that?
Yeah, and you will actually hear a lot of people say that value pricing couldn't possibly work in family law and that it doesn't work in litigation. Of course, these are the people that don't understand how to do it, and they do think that it can't be done. But I must say that we are a very busy family law practice that does do litigation, and we exclusively do it under a value pricing basis. And we say that really it's not that it only can be done, but that it shouldn't be done any other way, because what value pricing provides to the clients is certainty and transparency, and that is over, of course, the work that you're doing for them, but also the price that they're going to be paying for it. So
you're committing many heresies right now. I have to tell you this. Yeah? like arguing against the billable hour and transparency. No, just me joking.
Yes.
But the thing is that you have a major point here, because my partner in law, not my partner in crime, so not Katharina, so but one of my two partners in my law firm. Like, we have a co-working law firm, so to say. He also does family law, also mediation currently, but I think he does it with hourly rates, and I do mainly criminal law, and I have the same problem I think that you have in family law, that something's unexpected and people, well, they have a very simple goal, outcome, so get me out of jail, basically. I don't know if it's the same with family law. Get me out of this marriage. I don't know if it's comparable, so to say. And
it sounds comparable. I think certainly in some situations, yeah.
Yeah. And this is also the main question. I'm sure. I'm 100% sure. Even if Katharina maybe won't believe me, what I'm saying right now is that value pricing and project pricing can be done in criminal law. The only problem is, and which is why I'm so happy to have you here in the podcast today, I don't know how, because I've tried to get my head around, but I still have some issues that I'm not that I have a problem with to estimate the price or the fixed fees and things like that. But I think it's very comparable to family law.
Yeah,
he's
absolutely.
taking already the step ahead to my question of why is it such a challenge apart from being married to the hourly rate, like a dogma almost. What's the challenge? Michael mentioned estimation. So how's that? How do you marry that, or how do you help your clients, as in the law firms you're transitioning, with that problem?
Yeah, so I think in terms of challenge for attorneys, there really is three things in terms of the law firms, switching over. And the first one is, of course, that unlearning. It's that change, process that needs to that you need to go to, and it's that change of mindset that is really, really important. It's basically unlearning how you have always done things and learning how to do it in a different way. And value pricing is very different to that traditional model of law. So there is a hill to climb in terms of separating your estimated hours of how long something might take you from the value that you are creating for your client. And we all know that the hourly rate is so deeply ingrained into lawyers who record their time day in, day out. You could go out to dinner with a friend who's a lawyer, and any lawyers who are listening into this podcast would know exactly how many units, give or take maybe one or two, that they spent, out for dinner midweek with catching up with friends and family that they otherwise could have spent being kind of chained to their desk and converting that into billable hours, and that is something that I think as a profession is very, very sad that is the way that people think, but we are converting our time into potential profitability, etc. So it really is that unlearning and separating how long. It doesn't actually matter to the client at all how long something takes you to do it in terms of the value that they are receiving from you. What they care about is how much time you're saving them from them doing it themselves, if we're talking about time. And also, of course, the turnaround time, how quickly can you do it for them? Are you doing it when you said that you would? So it's very difficult and quite nuanced. There is a process that you go through. Pricing your own work can be extremely difficult. Having a pricing conversation with the client can be extremely difficult. It's not something that is taught. And when you're used to hiding behind the hourly rate, and I don't say that, in a derogatory way. I'm not saying that we're hiding behind it on purpose, but just that is the traditional model of law. We say to our client what the hourly rate is, and then the clock starts running, and then at the end of the month it's like, oh well, unfortunately my hands are tied, it's an hourly rate, you signed up to this engagement agreement, it costs you what it's going to cost you, without having that agreed up front. So I think that's certainly the starting point in terms of what the challenge is for attorneys. Another challenge, I think, of course, attorneys are typically quite skeptical and risk adverse by nature, and that is a good thing. I think it's what makes lawyers very good at doing what they do, and clients often rely on the lawyers being skeptical and risk adverse by nature. But there is then, of course, that that risk that needs to be assumed in switching from the hourly rate to switching over to value pricing. Under the hourly rate arrangement, there is very little risk to the firm, other than when they're in a circumstance where they don't have enough money in the trust account, or a client makes a cost complaint against them. But in terms of the fees, the risk really resides with the client. When we're looking at value pricing, that shares the risk between the lawyer and the client, because that price and that scope of work is locked in, and it's then on the lawyer or the law firm to work as effectively as possible to ensure that they maximize their profit. So I think a lot of people are worried about, of course, what if I get the price wrong? And I'm saying wrong in inverted commas here, but what if the price is wrong? And of course there's a whole discussion about, well, what's the right price, what's the wrong price? It's not your best estimate of the hours that it's going to take you. It really does come back to the value proposition that you can create for your client and the outcome that you are delivering.
So to sum it up, like it's not a good idea to base the value pricing on the estimation of hours of the billable hours, but kind of take them out of the equation and go a different way.
Yeah, look, and I'm not going to pretend that is easy, and certainly when you are pricing a matter on value, the time that it might take you could potentially be one consideration, because that goes to your resources within the team, for example, or yourself personally. You do only have so many hours in any given day or any given week. But there are a bunch of other considerations that you should also be turning your mind to, like the complexity of the work, how urgent it might be, what those client qualities are like. Is this person particularly sophisticated or organized, or what are their expectations like? How needy are they? What are they going to be like to work with? So there's a bunch of different considerations that you might want to think about when you are developing a scope of work and a price for that client. And the time that it might take you is one piece of that puzzle, but it certainly isn't the leading piece, or it shouldn't be converted to an hourly rate, given your best estimate, and then maybe adding a little bit more to capture some risk or how bad we might be at estimating our time, and then offering that as a fixed price to the client. Because if you're doing that, then you're leaving an awful amount of value on the table, and you potentially haven't drilled down far enough into what that client's specific objectives are and what the things are that you can do to help them. So that's where getting away from the hourly rate is really key. But of course, that is a natural starting point for people, and that's completely fine. And if you want to think about places where to start when you do start pricing your matters, I mean, of course, ideally you will detach the estimated hours from the price, but that is a natural place to start, and it does become easier with practice. So don't beat yourself up about it. You can certainly do that, but just keep an open mind to the other things that you can be considering. And ideally, I mean, the end goal is to not be recording your time at all. We don't record our time at all. So moving away from those hours is I mean, we wouldn't know if we were only estimating and then putting a fixed price on it. We don't now have the data which says whether or not we were over or under those estimates. And I think that is the goal that you should be reaching when you're moving to a value pricing model.
I mean, I'm just tracking my time with Timula, which is like a time tracking cube across like administrative files and the different businesses, just more like a general allocation of knowing how much time I spend on the business in general. And I wanted to put two thoughts out there that might help with value pricing. So often when you record hours, especially if you're a young associate, and then your bosses look over your timesheets and all the stuff before sending out the invoice, there's so often the comment, "Oh, we can't bill that much." So there's very quickly, if you're doing this job, there's an inherent gut feeling about, they wouldn't pay like 500 euros for this. They might only pay 100 euros for this, or 5,000 euros for answering a little question that changes everything. That might be okay. So that's one thing that I wanted to put out there. And the other thing is, I don't know if in Australia you have like statutory attorney tariffs, like something to fall back on, and what the court uses as a basis of their cost decisions. But in Austria, the tariffs have like a base value, which is usually the amount in question. And for legal issues where there is no amount, there are either estimates or fixed values to them, which are all put forth. And there you have sometimes the situation that if the value of the case is, say, 30,000 euros, because it's a cease and desist and blah blah blah, then you get for an hour in court for the lawsuit, for writing it, you get a fixed price, no matter if it takes you 5 minutes to do it or 10 hours to do it. So, and if the value is right or wrong in the tariff system is not the question. I'm just saying that we have been living with that. We have been working to that system. We have been taking that risk of, okay, I'm going to get 200 euros for that thing, no matter how long it takes me. And that's okay too. So I don't even know why so many attorneys are so against it when that system has been around subconsciously for quite a while.
Absolutely, and this is exactly sort of what we do say to people, and what we do often see all the time. So we do have the legal scale cost, and they're called the scale cost over here. They basically are reflective of cost determinations which are made. So when we engage with a client, we will enter into an engagement agreement with them, meaning that we can charge them outside of those scale costs. Now, the scale costs are all typically hourly rates, and for any law firm who wants to charge them different hourly rates, then they have to enter into a cost agreement or engagement agreement too. So I'm guessing that that's similar to what happens over where you are. When there are costs which are awarded, then it does fall back to those scale costs, and it is something that we did on a matter recently, and we're very successful in being awarded costs to our client. Our client, the other party had a cost order made against them, and we worked that out, notwithstanding that we don't have timesheet entries, and notwithstanding that we do operate on a value pricing basis. So I think courts do this differently. Even within Australia, the courts all deal with this in a slightly different way. The family court looks very different to how the Supreme Court does it, for example, and from between country to country it would be different again. But depending on the cost determination, some documents that we had to that were included under our cost application were on a per word basis, so it's like this
Wow.
many dollars per 100 words.
That's crazy.
Other ones are like this fixed price for this type of document, notwithstanding how long it took you. So I think that people perhaps sometimes misunderstand, what those cost determinations are. And of course, even when it does come down to the ones which are calculated on an hourly rate, just because it took a lawyer 10 hours to do something, if the court deems that only 3 hours was reasonable for that task, then that's what they're going to be paying. The court is there to determine reasonableness of the fee, regardless of how it was calculated.
Oh, the court doesn't have that much sway, because it's very well defined what can be claimed back or what can. So if I'm charging, say, 500 euros an hour, my client, and win the case, my client's never going to get that back. What I meant was that is when you say it's so hard to estimate, and the risk of misestimation, I meant just that you have that very often when it's when you have like a statutory base, and then it's like, yeah, well, then it doesn't matter. And I guess there is a certain, because the risk can pay off for you as well. If you have a contract that is absolutely genius and you can, I don't know, claim a couple of €1,000 for it, but it only takes you half an hour because you've just written it and you only adapt it, or you've already spent hours and hours and hours pondering over it, and it's your standard and it's your, I don't know, brainchild, then, it can pay off for you very well. So how does...
I guess, that goes to efficiency, doesn't it? And the effective solutions that you can create for your clients. And what the hourly rate does not award efficiency. It does not award innovation. It does not award, you doing things better and differently. That there's no incentive, for the firm or the lawyer to be building up on that when they can't then pass that cost on to the next client and to the next client. So that is something that, of course, value pricing brings to the forefront. And it makes sure that you are able to capture the value that you are providing to each individual client on every occasion that you are doing that work. And why shouldn't you be rewarded for that or remunerated appropriately?
It's not just the efficiency, it's also the knowledge you gain and the experience you gain,
Exactly.
which I thought would be a much better argument for attorneys when you say, look, a student might take 3 hours of research to write this one clause, or an associate, whereas I know it by heart and I just write it down in 30 seconds. Why should that not be, why should that be valued less? And that's
absolutely
the complete weird thing about it. But I'm looking a bit over to Michael, who's I can almost hear your brain rattling. What is your biggest challenge to do this in criminal law, which is definitely also one of those legal areas where I find it a challenge.
It's actually the thing with the data. I find it very hard to estimate how complex a case is gonna be. Which it's not for the more standard like cases. Like I'm trying to implement a kind of value pricing system currently with driving license law, because I'm very much into drug law, and those people are very likely to lose their driving license. So I'm currently establishing a product here. But in the other cases, I have cases that look kind of small on the first on the first day, and they tend to get very, very, very big, and that's the problem. The problem for me. Therefore, also I have so far taken like the hourly rate as a basis for the pricing for the total sum, which I've learned today is not the very best idea. And I have to, based on that, also have to rethink my pricing of the driving license things. But it's some cases are actually for me still very hard to predict.
Yeah,
Like
sure.
also
So
like the communication with the family. Like when a client of mine is in jail, the communication like time is quadruples.
yes, absolutely. So I guess the first point, and I probably haven't made this clear so far, but best practice when you are under a value pricing model is just to scope and price in stages throughout the course of the matter. So you don't have to give the client a price right now, which will take them through, the application, the court hearings, etc., up to if they go to jail, and then you have to communicate with their family beyond that. I mean, that would be far too long in terms of what you want to capture in your scope. So the way that we do it, and that I think that it's best done, is that you do scope in stages from right now until the next sort of appropriate juncture. And that might be driven by some upcoming court deadlines or what's on the table in front of you right now in any particular matter. So it may be up until the next hearing or up until a mediation conference, or, if it's ongoing advice and negotiations, you might say, okay, from now until the end of 2023, let's look at, that correspondence and advocacy piece there. So it's going to be customized to each individual matter, but essentially you can give them estimates or the roadmap from now until the end of their matter. But what we say to them is we're going to provide you with a scope that takes you up to a particular juncture for the work that we know is going to happen. So how that sort of looks in in practice is that you're preparing a scope for that next stage. We always include, it's a golden rule to always include 3 options in your proposal to your client, and there's a few reasons for that, which I'll come back to. But the idea is that you make the lowest option in your proposal the work that is absolutely essential to happen between now and that next point that you've determined where your scope is going to finish. And then in your middle option, you add in some extra nice things to have, and then in your top option, you can add, the fluff from there. And you can give, those options might differ in terms of service level offering. They might differ in terms of the work that you're actually doing for that client. It will fall to your value proposition and what those client qualities and how it is that you can really help that client, and everybody's proposal should and will look different. But that's sort of how it's done. So it takes away that unknown. You get to that end point of the scope, and then you have an opportunity to produce the next proposal and the next proposal. So if you've made a judgment call that somebody is going to be very easy to deal with, and you've priced them on that basis, by the end of the first scope, you're going to actually have a much better idea about how this person is to deal with, how difficult their case is.
Family.
You can constantly reassess those qualities. Exactly. How much communication they expect you to have with their family, all of those sorts of things. And then you have that opportunity at the next scoping juncture to, reassess and include that in your next scope, or to capture that in your next scope and price.
So you only take the risk for the first.
Very much, actually, because I currently, like when you were saying it, I was processing it in my mind and trying to link it to my cases, and there's actually a very good possibility, so to say, especially with these 3 options. This is a very, very interesting idea, because when I deeply look into it, I have actually a very clear understanding now, like the first 2 weeks of a client. It's always the same, because the first 2 weeks in my business are sometimes the most valuable. The first 2 or then 6 weeks.
Yeah, and then you have...
So there I have my, so to say, my scope.
And then you might have like a premium package where you also deal with the family and say, okay, if you want me to, talk to them as well, then that's an add-on. And then if you miscalculated in the first step, you'll calculate it or you estimate it better the second time because you overestimated it or you underestimated it. Yeah. And I do that too.
I sometimes compare it, but I tried, like when I was new into the law, I tried to compare it to like a restaurant's dinner, like a steakhouse or something. So you have the different kind of steaks and also the add-ons. And if you want more add-ons, like okay, I want not only the coleslaw or the fries or things like that, then I have to pay more.
Exactly. If you want the garlic prawns, you've got to pay for them, and not every client will need the garlic prawns. Same with the way the airlines price. You know exactly what you're getting when you're paying for an economy ticket in the emergency, aisle, versus first, business class or whatnot. So
that is also a very interesting notion, actually. Like I've so far done it only with a restaurant's menu, but as you say, like with when you take an airplane. So like when in our pre-talk before this podcast, I mentioned that I've been to the Legal Geek to London and I've actually taken the airplane there, and it was like, okay, you want to sit there, yeah, but you can sit next to the window, but this would be some euros more, and you can make, what is this, premium line or a quick line where you get first into the airplane and things like that. I've never thought about that this way, but it's actually the same, yeah.
And if you think about it, Michaela, this is the way that we as consumers expect to be to be, delivered services. If you think about what you buy in everything in your life, I mean, I can't think of anything that I buy at an hourly rate that I wouldn't be expecting somebody in this day and age to put the certainty of a fixed price on. And when I answer all the calls and onboard all the new clients that come into our law firm, into the Bromfield Family Law, and I explain to them the value pricing model and how it is that we charge. And we can overthink it sometimes when we're in the industry, because it is very different to the traditional model of law. But for your typical mum and dad clients, they might not have even used a lawyer before, and they think, oh, okay, great, so it's just the same as how I would buy a premium, this, that, or that. It's sort of, if you put yourself in the shoes, as we all are consumers, if somebody says to me, I'm going to give you 3 options, they're going to have fixed prices. You can choose between the options which one you want as it aligns with your needs and your values and your budget. We'll give you some payment milestones. We'll have these agreed timeframes, and then when we've completed that, you get your next proposal for the further work and so on. It just sort of makes sense, in terms of how you would, or I'm speaking for myself here, like in terms of how I would want to receive those legal services and that relationship with my professional to be framed.
That's also very, very, very interesting, because I think, and I think Katharina can agree to this, which is always I'm also preaching, aside from hourly rates, but the value to the client. So I think that this is a thing that Katharina can't hear anymore from me. But we always tend not to look at how the clients view us. And that's exactly also my point. When I have never been to a lawyer, I tend to view it like every transaction I've taken so far. And that's like flying or eating in a restaurant or even buying groceries. And I think we should start from there. And yeah, but you know what? I think you've given me many good ideas, and since on the time of this recording, it's like Tuesday, and on Thursday there is a national holiday here, and I think I know what I will do, because I think I have to get myself into value pricing, because I think it will actually solve some current problems of mine.
I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah.
I'm so glad to hear that.
So you've done it again, and as you said, this is the way. But this is more like a Mandalorian thing to say, but this is the way.
Yeah, but I mean, I got into the whole thing because I can admit that now in retrospect. Sorry, former bosses apart from Michael, who never forced me to do silly things like that. I was really bad at tracking my time. You get interrupted, and I was like, okay, did I not spend 10 minutes on this or 20? Or so this stressed me out, and just the feeling of tracking a 5-minute email that takes me longer to track than it took me to write it is just, there's something inside of me that just refuses to do that. And when I was first researching for my master thesis, for my book, and I was looking into agile pricing and where you have to estimate price every step of the way and how you could do that. And then I listened to the Lawyerist podcast, and Stephanie was on this podcast as well, and they had Ronald Baker on, who did his episode about value pricing, and it was like, oh my god. And I worked through the book, so that for me was a really mind-blowing thing, and he approached it from an accountant's perspective, and I've never seen any lawyers really going there so enthusiastically as you have, and on top of that consulting and helping other law firms, which I think is really, really fantastic. So we've talked about this, and I've obviously asked you in advance if also like European colleagues could ask you for help and could ask you, so what would colleagues who are like, okay, I want to try this, I want to do this.
You asked for me, didn't you?
Yes.
if we can't change Michael's perspective on the podcast, then
Yeah, I was
we have
just
to work
gonna
harder.
I was just gonna get you a voucher for some consulting by
Perfect.
Elani for Christmas.
Perfect. But it's like I have to go to Australia, which is no problem at all.
You can that plane ticket you can buy for yourself. One of the colleagues listening, like, okay, I wanna get into this. I wanna help. I wanna change our perspective and but the way we price things. Where do they start? Where do you start with them? What's the what can they do? Just call you up and you'll tell them, okay, we're going to get into a workshop and we do this. So how do you help the colleagues is my question.
Okay, so in terms of how we help other law firms, we really help people work through the practicalities of integrating value pricing into their practice and creating their value pricing blueprint, so to speak. Because there really is no cookie cutter approach. We know a lot of firms who practice value pricing, and they each do it in a unique way. There are some similarities, of course, some overarching principles, etc. But it really is open to interpretation and design by the specific firm. So what we really do is helping people find their how. And we found that there's a lot of fantastic people in this space explaining why it should be done. And I'd encourage anybody to have a look at, you mentioned Ron Baker and his colleague Ed Kless. They do talk about value pricing. They are on to value pricing 2.0 now, which is the subscription model. And they speak a lot at the moment about subscription pricing, but there's others in this space such as Tim Williams. You may have heard of him. He really does a lot in terms of positioning for the firm. So there is some really good info out there and people out there explaining why, but we found that there wasn't really many people showing other firms how. And so that's what we do. So me and my co-directors, Zoe Rosman, Catherine Bromfield, and we get on the ground with firms. We come on board with them like another sort of team member on their team, and we do, we give them the hand holding that they require to change their business model. So I guess, what we often say to people is that it's not just a pricing model change, it is in fact a business model change. And that is because the traditional model of law is so heavily wedded to the hourly rate and to time recording. It's how we calculate profitability, it's how we measure and reward our staff, it's how we communicate to our clients the work that has been performed, it's all those sorts of things. So when the hourly rate falls away and that time recording falls away, then you do have the opportunity to redesign your practice with your people, your clients, and your values at the core. And that's why, value pricing can have a number of different iterations and look different in each and every firm. And I know from our discussions, Katharina, that the way that you do value pricing looks very different to how we do value pricing, and that's completely fine, So what we do is we work with people. We help the firms develop their project plan. So actually nut down and determine what it is that they want to do and how we're going to get there. Is it just a trial run? Is it a full firm transition? Is it a training piece, etc. We do team. We introduce the team to value pricing through a series of sort of workshops or demonstrations. We help to sort of train people on how to scope and price legal work, including, building options and generating, those for their clients. We help people determine what their pricing policy might be to help to create some cohesiveness across the firm in terms of how they scope and price. We run value council meetings for people as well and help them set that up, in terms of their pricing structure within their firm. We also help people with their financial projections and reporting and actually structuring that, because as you can imagine, going from what you achieve from value pricing is actually having this pipeline of engaged work with fixed prices and set time frame. So what you actually end up building is this pipeline projecting your revenue forward that you can use as a very strong, tool with a very high degree of accuracy about how what your capacity looks like in the coming months, rather than having this whip on the clock and looking backwards, and how busy you have been this month. You think that you're going to be busy next month because you're feeling it like you're under a lot of pressure, but then they feel like they're busy, that they're going to be busy into next month and the following month, but they've got no real concrete data to help support that. So what value pricing gives you is real information in terms of what you've been engaged to do, the time frame that it's going to be done in, and the fixed prices, etc., that we can start projecting forward and use as a tool to manage our capacity and sort of delegate work amongst the team. So that's a huge benefit that value pricing brings. And then also, helping people design their team targets and their performance metrics without regard to the timesheet. So there's a bunch of different things that we can do for firms and in terms of value pricing, and certainly, helping them with that broader business model change. Essentially, we want to meet each firm where they are and, just help with the things as they go along on their journey. So we also have two wonderful partners that we work alongside with, John Chisholm and Scott Simmons, and they really help us to sort of fill in the other gaps. So John Chisholm, he's a value pricing guru in Australia and beyond. He really helps a lot with changing the mindset of lawyers, so working with them to help them to sort of identify and appreciate the value that they provide to their clients, and sort of help them peel themselves away from the timesheet and really help with that unlearning and that mindset shift. And Scott is a business development consultant, and he really comes on board with us to help lawyers learn how to communicate value to their clients, networks, and referrers with confidence, which is a particular skill set, which sort of is an important part of the puzzle when it comes to lawyers learning how to value price, because they need to be able to speak to their networks about it. They need to be able to communicate it to their clients, and they need to be sort of confident in that value that they're providing. So we partner with John and Scott to help us make sure that there's that rounded service there. But I think that you started this question by sort of asking me about where people start. And so I guess looking to the value pricing community is a really good place to start. What we really find, what we certainly see with all of the firms that we work with and other value pricing firms here in Australia, is that the value pricing firms, I guess, see each other as potential collaborators, not competitors. And that's something that has sort of shone true to me from the start of my value pricing journey. There's been a number of firms who have been extremely valuable with their time and sharing their expertise. I really do think that firms that operate under a value pricing model want other firms to do so for the betterment of the legal profession, because it really does address a lot of issues that the profession faces. So there are a lot of firms in the value pricing community. So I would really encourage anybody who's looking at or who's interested in value pricing to start by finding those people, and I'd be happy to point anybody in the right direction and bring them as part of my community as well. So I'd invite anybody to reach out to me, of course, but also just to give it a try. So just remembering those tips about scoping in stages, providing some options, starting with the base level and adding on from there. Another golden rule is never pricing alone. So make sure that you're pricing, even if you're a solo practitioner, making sure that you're pricing with a friend or a family member or a colleague that might be in a different area of law to you. But really important, because typically we do underprice the services that we are producing, because it's very easy for us to do something. So it may be that we are overlooking the value that we're creating. So yeah, I'd say just give it a try, following those tips, and sort of see how you go. And following that up with then applying a practice management style approach to that work, and producing the next proposal, and so on and so forth.
But it's very interesting, especially the thing that you're doing the pricing with relatives. You're also talking a lot of project management, and you have talked in this podcast. So are there some sources you can tell our listeners to get their hands on, so to say?
There is actually a lot of information available about legal project management. You can actually Google project management, and there's a lot of information readily available on the internet. In Australia, and this I'm sure would be true over where you guys are as well, there are actually courses offered on legal project management. So over here in Australia, there's sort of legal project management courses which are offered by the College of Law, and so on and so forth. And so learning those techniques, or the agile principles, and those sorts of things. So you don't really need to go too far into it before just understanding what those basic principles are in any project. And at this, one of those basic principles is that there should be a defined scope of work. There should be a defined, time frame in which that work will be performed in, and it's, different tasks should be allocated to people, within that project. So it's applying those really, the basic project management tools to the running of a legal matter. And it is that approach which is very different, because it's not the case that you just turn on the clock and the lawyer who's assigned the matter just goes on with it and just does the work until everything has been done. You are able to turn your mind to, well, who is the most appropriate person to be doing this task? Is this something that my PA or a law clerk, or somebody could be doing for me, or is this something that a more senior person needs to be doing, etc. It's really like allocating those resources. But what I might do, because I don't have a specific source that springs to mind, this is just sort of acquired learning that we have. But what I might do is have a look and see if I can find a source that I think would sum this up, and provide it to you so that you can put it in the podcast notes. That would be helpful.
That would be very kind, because I already see that we could do another episode, like legal project management. And since Katharina also wrote a book about this called The Agile Lawyer, she also would have a lot to say about it. She's currently, I have to apologize not only to you but also to our listeners. She's currently offline and having troubles with the internet. So it's not only maybe a ghostly season currently, but also a Wi-Fi less season, and different problems, so to say. So she's asked me to finish. To finish the rest of the interview. So there's one question left, since we like to say Christmas is up and coming. So do you have any software and hardware tools that you like to use in your daily work, in your daily life, so to say? What are your things that keep you going and planning and projecting and value pricing?
So in terms of value pricing, and as far as I'm aware, there is not a practice management software currently on the market that is specifically designed for value pricing, unfortunately. And I hope that there is one that's up and coming, or one that I haven't heard of that can be rolled out to Australia soon. because I do think that is a bit of a barrier, and it really is a chicken or egg scenario. I do think that there are lots of firms that potentially would be interested in moving to value pricing, but because the tech isn't there, that's something that could prevent them from moving, sooner. And then because the demand doesn't appear like it's there, then nobody's out there developing this software. So for me, that's a little bit of a shame, and hopefully something that does change. We use Action Step as our practice management software. That is, as far as I can tell, the best fit so far, because it is highly customizable. It does have an open API, and it's got a heavy focus on building integrations with their integration partners, and those partners are expanding all the time. So we use that currently, and we've molded it to be fit for purpose, and it is a pretty good fit for value pricing, which is really helpful. So that's, in terms of practice management system, that's what we use. There's a fantastic tool. There's sort of two other tools that are worth mentioning. One of them is a recent discovery, a recent product to the market with some really, really great potential, and that's called Hivelight. That's a project management tool which covers sort of workflow, and they really do take these principles. You can use sort of Kanban style setup, and you can allocate it between different team members, etc. You can plug your engaged scopes of work into basically like a project management chain, and that does integrate with Action Step, and it's got some other integrations as well. So that's a fantastic project management tool from what we can tell, and something that fits with value pricing really nicely. And then there's another tool that I know of which comes from Canada, and it's called AltFee. You may have heard of AltFee before. They've been on the market for, I'd say, probably 18 months to 2 years now, and that is a pricing tool which really helps firms to price their legal work and capture and communicate learnings to each other, and you can use that tool to build and prepare your scopes of work for your clients. So I would say that's one to check out for anybody who's interested in value pricing as well.
Okay, so that sounds very, very interesting. Thanks for the tips. Do you have any other software or hardware you tend to use in your daily life, which you say that it's could be interesting for other lawyers and colleagues?
No,
If
I
not,
don't.
it's no problem. We just
Yeah,
asking.
I know
So
my director's recently started using a program called Motion, which she absolutely loves. That's like a tool that she sort of plugs all of her tasks into and gives them like a priority rating, or whether or not it's fixed deadlines or whatnot, and it sort of organizes her week in terms of what she should be doing and when, and it plugs those things into her calendar for her. And then, as the time moves on, if that task wasn't done at that particular time, then it will slot it back in and reshuffle everything based on the priorities, etc., that it's been assigned. So that's a tool that she started playing around with.
that's also
Um,
sounds interesting.
yeah, yeah. Not something that we're using at a team level yet. She's just, dipping her toe in the water on that one. But really interesting, I think, because with your normal Outlook or whatever it is that you're using, if you plug something in, you don't do it at that time, then it sort of falls off the cliff unless you reshuffle it yourself. So yeah, that's something that I think she's been really loving.
Uh, I know, I know what you're talking about. I'm currently doing like a daily priority list based on the Eisenhower matrix, and I do it in analog. I have it from there's a company. I think I'm not sure if it's also from Canada or something. It's called Ugmonk Analog, and they do this wonderful analog, like where you have like cards where you can put 10 tasks each day on them, and you can rate yourself how productive you were, and you can cross them out. So that's actually very, very interesting.
Yeah.
I like this
similar.
analog system.
Yeah, I'll have to check that one out.
Which brings me to the last question. What do you think? And I'm really, really like excited about it. Gandalf or Dumbledore?
Gandalf or Dumbledore? Oh, that's a really tough one.
Yeah, I know.
That's a really tough one.
But you can always opt for Doctor Strange.
No, it would have to be between Gandalf and Dumbledore.
Yeah.
I'm a Harry Potter fanatic, so I'm going to have to say Dumbledore, but I also love...
Katharina will be glad to hear that. So that you're like narrow, but surely team Dumbledore.
Yeah, very narrow. So, I'm sorry, Gandalf.
Well, we'll have him on another time. So, thank you very much.
Love it.
Thank you very much for your time and for the insights, which are very interesting.
Thank you so much, Mikael. It's been lovely chatting to you.
We can give it back, so to say. And well, thank you to our listeners for hearing this episode, and we will soon be back next time in German again, but we will surely be doing other English episodes. So, goodbye.
Danke, dass ihr beim Nerds of Law Podcast zugehört habt. Auf unserer Webseite nerdsoflaw.com könnt ihr das Impressum, Datenschutzinformationen und viele spannendere Dinge finden. Dieser Podcast ist durch eine Creative Commons by Non-Commercial 4.0 International License geschützt. Das bedeutet, ihr dürft den Podcast kopieren, mit Freunden teilen, mit der Information, wo der Podcast herkommt, und ihn nicht für kommerzielle Zwecke verwenden. Das Urheberrecht für die Musik liegt bei Mick Bourdais. Ihr findet seine Webseite unter mickbourdais.com. Live long and prosper. Eure Nerds of Law.